Welcome back to Ask an Analyst. This is a show where we take real questions from game teams and break them down with people who spend their days deep in data, growth, and decision making. The goal of the series is to go beyond theory and best practices in the abstract. We really want to focus on real situations that game teams run into, what the data actually looks like, and how to reason through it. Today's question is one that I think almost every studio that's tried to scale paid growth will recognize. And as always, I want to mention that if you have a question that you'd like us to cover in a future episode, you can submit your question on our website. I'm Allison. I'm the COO of GameAnalytics with over a decade of experience in data and insight. I've worked both within studios and also solution providers. And to help us unpack the question today, I'm super excited to be joined by Sven Jürgens. Thank you so much for joining us, Sven. Nice to have you here.
Thank you so much.
Sven, you are a growth consultant and advisor. You've worked on a wide range of games and app teams, scaling user acquisition, retention, and monetization in a sustainable way. Can you tell us a bit about what you're working on right now and what kind of problems you're spending most time with?
Yeah, sure. So first of all, thanks for having me here. I'm doing this now for 10 years, as you said. So everything from mobile growth, from the very first ad impression down to how the user really behaves in app or in the game. And what I'm spending most time is maybe a bit of boring part that no one wants to admit, but it's research. So really a lot of research down to when your store's not converting, why is that? When your ads are not converting, why is that? When no one wants to convert on your paywall, etc. So this is for me always the starting point to understand the problem, obviously, not just throwing any sort of template on top of that, but to know where to start and what is really broken.
Mm-hmm. Should we dive into the question?
Yeah,
ready?
Let's go.
All right. The question we had a phase where growth looked great, but once we tried to scale harder, ROAS collapsed pretty quickly.
Yeah.
How should we figure out what went wrong?
Yeah.
So I think it'd be great. Then we can break this down. I think it's a common situation here. Maybe we can start by diving into the ROAS collapse and make sure that we understand what that means specifically. When someone says to you that ROAS collapsed, what do you want in terms of clarification before jumping to a conclusion?
Yeah, that's awesome. It's also like a tough one because there's a lot of stuff to unpack here. So first of all, I would love to see what really went wrong. So when we just look at ROAS, right? So it's revenue over spend. Usually the spend is increasing at some point in time when you are scaling, and the revenue doesn't grow along with that after time. And when we say, cool, what does revenue even mean? So someone is buying something, yeah. So it's usually quantity and the price that's determining that. And usually one of that might not grow as expected when you're spending much more. This is like down funnel in your product, right? Could be like your paywall, could be like the user quality, could be the people that are not maybe going throughout the onboarding, right? Could also be that your team is maybe doing some A/B testing on the prices. So there are a lot of could be's right now. So I think we will unpack that then in the next minutes a bit more, but also like on the upper funnel side, on the spending side, when your CPI is maybe rising and your spend is increasing, then you might maybe run out of your users, your hot users at some point in time. Usually when in a one sentence answer, I would say it's maybe your upper funnel performance, your ads might be dropping in performance, or lower funnel that the user is not converting as well as before.
You started to touch on it as well, but breaking down ROAS into the components to diagnose where it sits, what are you looking at there? What are the most important metric signals at this stage?
Usually, I would love to see the whole funnel because one metric usually is not telling the whole truth on that. Usually, I start really upper funnel. So where the ads are, could be TikTok, could be Meta ads, could be anywhere. So how are they looking? What is going on there? Is the, for example, frequency increasing? So are more people seeing the same ad over and over in time? Then usually your performance drops and you're paying like more for that, right? Could also be that you are running out of your core audience. That happens all the time, to be honest. So I would love to say that scale is just linear, and then when you spend more, you get the same out of that. It's never the case, right? So from really upper funnel down to lower funnel could also be that maybe your ASO team is running right now an A/B test, in your store that is maybe not crushing it, or it was released not on purpose. It could also be that maybe your product team is running like a test on your onboarding that is right now not working well or enough for that. Or the combination of all of that is when you're really running out of your hot audience, that your retention is dropping, that the conversion rate is dropping, that they are just not behaving as before, as your core audience, right? So when you have your set of game, let's say strategy core game, and at some point in time, you will run out of your very hot, your very core beloved audience, let's say, and then they might need a bit of better onboarding. Maybe they need more education on how to play the game, actually, right? And this all comes down then to usually higher costs and lower revenues because you're moving away, right, from your best audience you can have, and then you pay a premium.
Yeah, I want to get into how to work within that reality a little bit later as well. But is that at low scale, is this the main assumption that teams make, that everything is going to be linear?
Yeah.
So that's the comment. It's a common situation that teams get into. They start scaling and they're like, oh, wait, what's going on?
And in short, so especially when you're just starting out. So I'm honest here. I had the same assumption 10 years ago. There, I started with a smaller company, a card game company, and I did the first few UA tests here and there, and everything looked great, and the numbers were great. When I spend 1,000, I get that back. Cool. Now I can spend 10,000, get the same back. Obviously, it's not true. It's never true, and it's usually bound to how people behave and what they think and what their prior knowledge is on something, right? So let's say when you have a diet app or health app, or doesn't matter what you have, right? So there's always like a subset of users who are really keen about what you have and are really knowledgeable, right? So they really know how to do this certain game, task, whatever. And the more you spend, the harder it is then also for the algorithm and for the network to find these very users. And it's just how it works, right? So when someone knows how to play like a hardcore strategy game, then there's nothing really to tell them. They already know, right? And they are, your perfect audience. The more you move away from that, the harder it is. Maybe you need to change something in the ads, for example, that they are more educational, that they maybe show even how you can achieve a certain level, or how you can update your troops, or how you can do certain things that you would not necessarily need to show your hottest audience, but you need for sure for the ones that are a bit warmer or maybe even colder audiences. And therefore, it's usually a common problem that the more you spend, obviously there's opening up the reach, you get more impressions on the network. At some point, you will have then less of these high intent, high quality users. And you need more and more time on really compare that to quite some sort of Rubik's cube. So it's still one product, it's still one onboarding, it's still one game, but the lenses you look through and the angles you have in your ad and the communication are always a bit different. And therefore, you need sometimes a bit more on the education part in your ads, in your screenshots, in your onboardings, whatever it is, to really take the user by the hand, right? Say, cool, you're a bit colder audience, cool. I get it. You don't know all the products here. We take you by the hand, right, and walk you through that.
So they know what they're getting into in a different way.
Exactly,
essentially. And have a bit of an early signal. So you've thrown out quite a few things to look at.
I'm sorry.
So I think it is an expansive question in that way. There's so many things in a game, and tied with UA is the organism that also is always changing. But I want to ask, in your experience, what typically breaks first? Maybe you've already alluded to that, but if you can take this person who asked the question through, first check this and this, what would be the first three things they should dig into?
Maybe the easiest, but also the ugliest, but you can solve it quite quickly, is tech issues. When your server is not ready, that's usually something that your DevOps team can solve quite quickly when you just throw money on the machine. So when you tested your multiplayer maybe with 1,000 people, worked great. Now with 1 million, it's breaking, right? So that's usually what is quite easy to solve in the end. Something else, and that's a common thing, is that your early numbers will usually look better. So maybe you had some dev diary on Reddit, or you had some community on Reddit, right? On Discord, sorry. these are really like your hardcore users, right? So the people who really love your product. And when you're then finally launching, then you might sit back and say, cool, we are printing money, everything looks great, it's awesome. But in reality, it's just the maybe 1,000 people, maybe the 5,000 people from your Discord who really love your game, right? And they obviously know how to play that because they've seen all the dev diaries, all the trailers, everything, right? They really are into that. And they're obviously also spending because they want to support you. So early numbers are always inflated, are always looking better than when you're opening up the market and go and spend on Meta or TikTok or whatever.
How would you discount those numbers?
It's tough to assign one percentage to that. But what at least I saw, it's something in the 20, 30 plus area could be that you have to discount your first retention rates, your first conversion rates, etc. Whatever number you have there. Usually this is going down for sure. And also depending on the community size, right? So when you have like your first 5,000 users on Discord and you swap them over to your game, then you want to really double check and also take note on that. Hey, this is our audience. This is our Discord users, right? So to not jump into early conclusions and, I don't know, raise $2 million on these numbers, you could. It's up to you.
Raise that money if you can do it. Why not? But maybe not spend it immediately.
Exactly. But be sure that the investor will then talk to you half a year later why these numbers are dropping.
Yeah.
Because early numbers always look better.
So going forward for this team, you've talked to the listener about how they can diagnose it, which areas to look at in terms of, is it tech? Is it the game? Is it running out of audience? What is the smart way to scale at this point? How should the studio move forward?
So I'm a big fan of doing something step by step. So it's really depending on your team, right? So when you have 100 people working for you, then you can tackle bigger questions than when you're just starting out and maybe have 10 people in your team. But a global launch or global rollout requires a lot of steps and is a complicated thing and obviously costs you some money, right? And I'm also a friend of not just copy pasting stuff because you want to understand the audience, right? Because the user in US is different than the user in Italy. It's for sure. It's not only translation, but also like cultural and understanding and how they behave and what they think about your game. And you want to understand that. Common issue is when I see people just copy pasting their ad into another country and best case scenario translate that and then say, cool, it's not working. Yeah, a lot of times it's working. Yeah, there's a big overlap for sure. But you still want to have some decent, research, right, on these people because it's a totally different culture, totally different geo on what they are doing there and to have the best possible ad market fit and product market fit. You want to do your homework and you want to do your research on that. So I think that is oftentimes overlooked.
This methodical way forward, continuing to
exactly step by step, right? Yeah. It's usually the big thing is the better answer. Again, when you're like a corporate and have lots of people working for you, then you can roll it out globally for sure. Yeah. But in the mid-sized range, it's usually a better idea to tackle one country at a time, understand that also on the network side, right? Understand that first, make your learnings, also fail fast, that you can drive your conclusions and assumptions and then adapt to that.
One thing that this person said in the question that I thought was interesting was that ROAS collapsed pretty quickly. What does that tell you? What kind of questions does that put in your head when it is quick like that?
It depends on what quick means. So quick would be like literally hours. Then usually something is really like 0 or 1. So something is really broken and something is really like maybe a tech issue even that something is not responding, or maybe even your API reporting is not working when you fetch your reports from some networks or from your analytics. Usually a decline comes over time when there are humans involved in that. So when you're, for example, burning through your audience, then you rarely see a drop within hours. Usually it's days or weeks, and then your conversion rate goes down or the frequency goes up from the people or the ads being shown to many users. So the faster you see something is usually for me an alert that maybe even a tech issue is happening here. Because when, for example, you're running out of audience, this is something that you don't see in 2 hours.
When a team is certain that it's the audience dilution, what are some ways You said that signal is more over time and see these numbers receding, your retention, maybe your in-game behavior. What are some ways for teams to work around that?
Yeah, you usually refer to that with the Rubik's Cube example, that you have your different lenses on the same product and the same game. When you want to grow and you really want to expand your audiences, a good way of thinking about that is in terms of what can you do to really touch them emotionally? Saying, is that something connected to their daily life? Is that some sort of angle that you didn't use before? Is that something maybe even on the audience side? Maybe you were targeting females before, now you're targeting males. Maybe you targeted younger people before, now you want to target older people before. All of that is what you can do even without changing the product. And that all the time also with software as a service companies or agencies, right? Where they have this tab in the website, hey, we are for vertical 1 or 2 or 3 or 5. Right? So it's this one product or service, but for different verticals, different industries even. And for UA perspective, this usually is then in the communication. When you say, cool, we can help you this way, or we can solve you that way. And it's like these different lenses that you have on your creatives and your communication that is still pointing to your one app and your one solution, but with different angles in the end.
Can you give an example of a game or studio that you've seen do this in a clever way? Apply the Rubik's Cube methodology where they're pulling on some other kind of emotional string to broaden their user base?
Yeah, sure. It's a company that I was working on, so I can't say the name right now, but it's a detective story game, right? They did that in the end. And for some, it was super interesting to solve this very case, to be like Sherlock Holmes, right? So this was their main theme there. And for someone else might be, hey, you can literally stalk on some chats, like in-game, on your friends and neighbors. So it was like this kind of stalking theme in the end, right? So what you can do with them. And for health and fitness could be, hey, you want to lose weight. Yeah, okay, cool. That's just the headline, right? That's one idea. But you want to usually go deeper into that. So why do you want to lose weight? Is it maybe because your wedding is next year? Is it maybe because your, I don't know, neighbor was laughing at you, right? Could be lots of different themes and angles on why you want to have that, like this Rubik's Cube example. And this is then done by user research. That you have maybe your own surveys, your own onboardings, your own data, or you can also spy on competitor ads and also use review mining could you do to really know what the user is doing and how they use your product, use your app, or how they game it, or where they game it. At the bus station, in school, on the couch, when Netflix is running, whatever, right? We meet them where they are, and then you have usually way more angles, way more ideas, and then you can expand from this idea.
That's super interesting. I love that gameplay can be very emergent in that you were just saying that with a detective story, players might come in because they want to solve a case, but then also part of that is talking friends. And you can, once the players get in, you can almost, sometimes anyway with data, you can see like these side paths that players are taking or things that you just would not have expected that they might be doing. So it's almost, data-wise, you can almost look at some of the like non-majority behavior that you might have going on.
Yeah, and some it's really in the data, right? And some might be even abusing your game to something, right? So also in this very game, people were after a love story because there you have your chat system, and you could always choose like the lovely line, right? And this was a thing for some people, right? And then you can create your sub-segments out of that. And then you make your dedicated ads and flow, et cetera, to the people who want this love story. Some be Sherlock Holmes love story or stalking. So it could be anything.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then there is the emotional, I think that emotional angle you were talking about is maybe a bit harder to find, like why you're coming in, you want to be a detective, you want to solve the case, and you might see them doing that in the data. But then it's like, why and what is the motivation behind it? I think that's more pulling on our own emotional intelligence maybe to understand that.
Yeah, and this is the tough answer, right? And the answer for that is usually a bit old school sometimes, but talk to people. It oftentimes overlooked. It's still surprising for me, right? We have all our analytics dashboards and data and I don't know, terabytes of data, but sometimes just inviting your players into your office and give them something, I don't know, Amazon voucher, whatever, and watch them play your game and also talk to them is unlocking something that you might have never experienced. Because nowadays we only look at data and funnels and dashboards, etc. But when you really invite them to your house and to your office and really talk to them and watch them play your game, it's unlocking a whole new thing for you. So many insights in there.
For sure. We forget that as creative people.
Yeah.
There are people behind.
Exactly.
We love the data. So let's get into maybe channel decay a little bit. So one thing is that the audience might not be available, but what should studios expect in terms of channel level decay as they're scaling UA?
Yeah. The brutal answer is that every channel will drop in performance at some point. It's like I said before, it's just how people work, right? And how they think and behave. At some point, you were running out of your audience or your kind of hot audience, and then you need to the warmer audience, and then maybe to the colder audience. It's just how it works. But also what I see teams doing, I think wrong, is jumping to the next channel too quickly. Meta can reach billions of people, right? So there usually is enough audience for you to reach when you're doing that, like we said before, in a smarter way to communicate them in a different way and a different angle. So what I usually suggest for teams is give the channel a chance and be fair. So sometimes I see someone spending a few $1,000s on a channel and say, cool, it's not working. That's the easy answer. But usually you didn't give it a really proper chance to really perform. And maybe even your ads weren't working, or maybe your product wasn't ready, might be a different thing. But the thing is, you will see a decay on your channel level for every network. The performance will go down, that's for sure. And then it's usually on the teams and on maybe the growth teams to understand why and then behave on that and solve that issue, like we said before. Find different angles and do this audience expansion that we just talked about. But what I see is that teams are moving too quickly to other channels because they think, cool, now we go through it and now we throw it away. Now we go to the different one. This might work in the short term, but there are only so many networks that work, right? And so many that are even good, right? So usually it's the hard work that's paying off to understand it, to give it a chance, to make your assumption, make your hypothesis, test that, iterate that, and give it like a proper chance. And not saying that you should spend like millions of dollars into one channel that's not working, for sure. Set yourself a baseline on that. But yeah, don't throw away big channels too quickly, because honestly, Meta, TikTok, etc., you can reach nearly everyone on this page. So there is your audience in there.
Maybe it's a bit of a band-aid to be jumping channel when what you should be doing is that deeper research or investigation into
for sure.
Pushing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Then talking about creative specifically, how can you tell the difference between a creative that will scale and then maybe one that is just having a short-term spike with success?
Yeah, that's a tough one. And it's getting tougher every day. Because although, nowadays AI, right? So everyone can be their own agency and literally spit out hundreds of creators a week or a day, maybe. And I also saw that with very big accounts launching ridiculous amount of creators, right? So it's kind of shifting from kind of quality to quantity these days, that you can also with AI do so many things that you couldn't do before. And a few years ago, a good creative was running maybe for a month or maybe even half a year or maybe 9 months, right? So when it was really good and really was talking to your people, and obviously there was enough market. When you're just a plumber in New York, then your market is smaller for sure. It might not run for 10 years. But when you have something universal, strategy games or fitness apps, there's a lot of audience on this planet, right, for that. And these days it's shrinking, and even like high-paced networks like TikTok might burn through a creative within days or weeks, right? So it's very short. And yeah, usually it's a make or break thing. So when you have a really outstanding creative, then you will see that. Then you see that within a few hours, maybe even when you upload that to Meta ads and you run that in your campaigns, this will then also be rewarded from Meta and see, cool, this works. I can make money with that. We can make money with that, hopefully. And then they're getting more reach.
Okay, fascinating about how now it's like the scale issue almost, but is what you're saying the fact that there's so much scale out there and so many different types of ads that when one is good, it's much more obvious now than it was before? Or is it the same signals as before that one is ready to scale?
It's a bit more diversified, at least what I see. It might be different for other verticals, but usually you have a few that might work well. And unfortunately, a lot of them might not work. A good win rate when you work with agencies or with designers is somewhere in the 10%. So when you launch 100, then maybe 10 make it, like really grow big and you get your reach, etc., etc. And everything beyond that is super. Below that might also work depending on your setup and how many people are working there. But yeah, usually you need still some velocity and also some output to at least test them and have your hypothesis right. Sometimes I also see studios, especially smaller studios, maybe having one trailer ready where they were working on for 3 weeks and everything was put into this one trailer. And then, yeah, unfortunately, I have to say, yeah, okay, cool. A lot of work went into that, maybe one trailer, but what if it's not working? And usually it's not working. So because it's just their own view and hypothesis, and this is not how you can scale, right? So you need also make sure that you have your design team ready and that you have your processes ready, that they can, with AI usually these days, produce in a meaningful way. And yeah, lots of creatives in the end.
Very nice. So I want to just pause and recap a couple of things that I'm hearing in terms of your answer to the question, and then we can make sure everything gets covered. But so the question around ROAS collapsing quickly is around what you would want to look at first is mapping the full funnel. As you said, is it a UA problem or an in-game problem? And then making sure you understand the context in which you're working. And then if it's particularly fast, looking into a tech issue or some kind of issue with the game. Whereas if it's a longer term kind of decline, then that gets into more of the audience. You talked about the Rubik's Cube approach to finding audience that works with your game. I love that. And then the advice not to jump channels, essentially. So for the person who asked this question, just to wrap up, what's the one thing you feel like they should start doing at this point and one thing that they should stop doing?
Yeah, it is so important, unfortunately, that you look at everything, like your whole funnel, right? Usually you can maybe break it down from impression to install or even impression to spend metrics. But when something is breaking, you don't see that only in the CPI, for example. Look at the full funnel. And the thing is that, yeah, it's everything connected, right? When you're buying low quality users, your day one retention drops and your ARPU is dropping, and maybe even your multiplayer session doesn't make any sense anymore because you have no one to match in your game, for example. It could be a lot of things, and a lot of things are connected. Stop doing is, yeah, good question. Maybe the opposite of that. So only looking at one metric, I wouldn't do that. So ROAS is a great one. It's a super insightful value, but it's only telling you so much, right? So you don't see like your day one retention there, or if your onboarding breaks, etc., etc. It can indicate that, but then you still need to, dig down to this and really find out what's wrong.
Thank you. All right. So now we want to get into something a little bit different with a round of rapid fire Q&A for you. We have 3 more questions submitted by listeners, and we want to hear what you think about them. So are you ready?
Yes. Let's go.
Great. All right. So what is an overrated UA metric that we perhaps rely too much on?
Yeah, referring back to what I said before, I think CPI, still many teams rely on that. Look at the whole funnel, in short answer.
Great. All right. At what point should you stop increasing spend, even if CPI still looks good?
When you don't make money anymore. So when you're profitable, awesome, spend it. If not, then stop it. Or could also be when you don't have design resources anymore, could also be. But being profitable is number one for me.
Great. All right. What is a healthy testing cadence for UA without burning budget or teams out?
Yeah, I think you can solve a lot of things with research. Yeah, know your users, like I said before, right? So Italy might be different from US, might be different from Sweden, and do your research and know how to reach them, how you produce them, and have your workflows ready. So scaling means a lot of creatives, and you want to be prepared for that, that you don't run into ad fatigue and say, cool, we don't have any creators anymore, and what to do now, right?
All right, listeners, we would love to know what you think about what we have talked about today. Would you answer differently than Sven and myself, or do you have more advice for the person who wrote in the question, we would love to hear from you with that. Or maybe you have a question yourself that you would like to be answered on future episodes. If you would like to give us any commentary, we would love to hear from you. You can look us up on our website, GameAnalytics.com, or you can track us down on LinkedIn as well. We want to wrap up also by mentioning that as part of the Ask an Analyst series, we're hosting a monthly Ask an Analyst office hours. This is myself and our GameAnalytics team. We will be available once a month to answer questions for you on a drop-in basis. You can pop in and ask us live. These will not be recorded, so maybe you have a question that has more confidential information related to it. This would be the best venue for that. Please check the website for when the next one is. Other than that, I want to say thank you, Sven, for joining us today. This was super fun and also informative. I hope the person writing the question gets some good advice out of it, and also the people listening to the podcast as well. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much.